we're here for our number 5 top card in Streets of New Capenna for Modern, and that is Titan of Industry. This is a very powerful modal card, very similar, as you can see in the thesaurus, to things like Woodfall Primus. This allows you to choose 2 as it comes into play. You can destroy target artifact or enchantment, target player gains 5 life, put a 4/4 Rhino token into play, or put a shield counter on. This is a very flexible card that allows you to do many different things, and is a very good one-of in a Summoner's Pact deck, much like Amulet Titan, or in a Reanimator deck as kind of a way to get out of difficult situations, like against an aggressive deck. This is kind of a nice backup for something like Archon. It's a little bit more targeted, gets you a little more board presence. There's a lot of situations where in a Reanimator or a Green Ramp style deck, this card could just be superior to a lot of the options that are already out there. So I think this is a card that warrants taking a look at in the modern format, and certainly a card that we'll see play, whether it's going to be the most powerful or the most consistent. I do think it is one of the most flashy cards that's going to see play as Streets of New Capenna, and while I don't think it's going to create any new archetypes or anything, I do think it will help at least 2 different pseudo-archetypes that exist within the format, that being Amulet Titan and Ramp, and, could potentially see play in a skewed thing, something like Tron, although it would be very, very difficult for Tron to cast green, green, green. But let's move on to card number 4. So for our number 4 spot, while a lot of people are talking about Nissa and the infinite combo with Planebound Accomplice, I'm more interested in the cheaper, easier to cast Obnixilis the Adversary. This card comes in and you can immediately sacrifice a creature to create a copy of it. It's non-legendary with X starting loyalty. So, it's possible some dream scenarios would be like turn 1 Mana Dork, turn 2 Rotting Regisaur, turn 3 Obnixilis, Ultimate Obnixilis, and then still have the original Obnixilis around. This card is potentially very powerful. It is lower mana cost, which is more than can be said about a lot of cards on this mana list. Generally in Modern, if you're looking for a playable card, you generally want to be looking for the cheaper and more effective the card is, the generally more play it's going to see, rather than the big and splashy effects like we did with something like Titan of Industry. Its plus, your opponent will be losing life more likely than discarding cards. It's not always great if your opponent has the option, but you also have the ability to gain a little bit of life if you have control of Demon or Devil, which just -2 allows you to create. Obviously, the -2 gives you a little bit of board presence, the ability to protect the Obnixilis potentially, or to sacrifice to another copy of Obnixilis down the line. And the -7 allows target player to draw 7 cards, lose 7 life. You can use this to finish off your opponent if they've lost enough life with the +1 ability, or you can use it to refill your own hand to kind of take over the game with something like a black-red midrange deck or a black land, say, Ragavan deck, etc. I think this card has the most potential, and while it doesn't have the infinite combo that something like a Nissa does, Nissa requires a little bit of setup to have, a particular card, Planebound Accomplice, to make the card really playable, because 6-mana Planeswalkers are typically not very playable in Modern, except for something like Karn Liberated and Tron, but that's a whole different ballgame. I think Obnixilis might see some play, but it will definitely take a little bit of imagination to kind of leverage this card to its highest ability. But I do think this is the kind of card that could see play in Modern just for its cheapness, and it has some reasonable effects for a 3-mana Planeswalker, especially a 3-mana Planeswalker that you can copy quite easily. And, nothing better than having 1 Planeswalker activation per turn. It's having 2 Planeswalker activations per turn. So for number 3, we're going to be bringing up the Charms. And there was 5 of them printed, but really only 2 of them could see play. The first one is Obscura Charm, which can allow you to return a multicolor permanent with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Hello, Rebind Fairy Time Raveler. Or it can allow you to counter target instant or sorcery. Not the most efficient card for that, but it is powerful. Or destroy target creature or planeswalker with mana value 3 or less. Very flexible card, might see some play if there is ever a viable Esper Shell out there. Right now it's kind of a color that's kind of lagging behind a lot of the other things, but with the printing of something else that we'll talk about here in a second, it might actually have a chance of succeeding. And the other one that we'll probably see a little bit more play, and it's probably the most powerful of them, is the Riveter's Charm. Choose 1. Target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker they control at the highest value among creatures or planeswalkers they control. Basically, this is a nice out to things like Murktide Regent, or if your opponent's only playing planeswalkers, killing something like a Wrenn 6 instant speed. Also has the option of exiling the top 3 cards of your library. Until your next end step, you may play those cards. So you can do this during your main phase of your turn, and obviously get access to them then, or you can say play this at the end of your opponent's turn, see 3 additional cards during your turn, and then it's nice to have a little bit of flexibility with the ability to also exile target player's graveyard. Mostly you can do this against your opponent's stuff, like say Gain 1 against Living End or whatever. But, this is a very flexible card, and while it's not the cheapest, it does offer the flexibility of being either an Edict effect, card advantage, or potentially exiling graveyards. So this is definitely a card I think we'll see play maybe in something like Jund Saga or something along those lines, especially with the loss of Luris of the Dream Den. So that's it. Let's get into number 2. Number 2 is a card that might see play is Luxior's Giada's Gift. This basically allows you to turn your planeswalkers into creatures. Various different planeswalkers that see play throughout Modern. You can turn your Liliana of the Veil into a creature. You can turn your Renin 6 into a creature. Be very powerful to drop this on like turn 3 or 4 and have a 5/5 Renin 6 sitting in play. But another card this also pairs with is Devoted Druid, giving you another combo besides the Zero of Remedies to be able to tap on tap, tap on tap, tap on tap. This basically turns yet another way to combo with that card. And although creature decks frequently have struggled of late, whether it be, Heliod combo, whether it be Devoted Druid combo, the only one that is currently somewhat played in the format is the Yawgmoth combo. So it remains to be seen whether Luxor's Gift can be played. But there are a couple different shells you can do. You can explore this in a pseudo Super Friends build, which there have been some on the fringes of Modern over time. Whether it be a Doubling Season deck, whether they be a Maga the Lion? Is that the one? Something the Lion. Karth the Lion, that's the one. Those decks have both seen play, and this would give you another angle of attack with that deck. Or if you had some type of deck maybe topping out something like a 5-mana Sarkhan that turns all your planeswalkers into creature or flying dragons. And there's a lot of different things you could potentially do with this card. I do think at being 1 mana and 1 mana to equip to a planeswalker, this is potentially a card you could see playing in Modern. And that said, before we go to number 1, there really is only one choice as to what card will be the most, or what cards will have the biggest impact on Modern overall, although they may not be the flashiest. And on to number 1. Number 1, of course, being the long-awaited Allied Shard Trilands. Ever since the printing of the Triomes, people have been saying how nice it would be to have the completion of that set, and with Streets of New Capenna, you get those things, whether it be Xander's Lounge, Zeotor's Proving Ground, basically everything. Bant, Jund, Esper, Grixis, and Naya all finally get their Triomes, and these are cards that have a proven pedigree, whether basically any of the other 5 Triomes have seen play at some point. So these are cards, the big thing with them is they have the land subtype of Island, Swamp, and Mountain, which in a format full of fetch lands allows you to, albeit get a tapped land, but still gives you the access to all of your colors, especially if you have no play on turn 1 or turn 2. Sometimes you can get these into play without there being too much of an issue. And I do think these are the cards that will see the most play in the format, although that's kind of anticlimactic. There's a lot of other cards that I've seen some other people pointing out, but I think these are the cards that I am most interested in seeing in the Modern format, and the ones that could end up having the longest long-term impact, although there are a few other cards that could potentially see play in the right shells, and could potentially even be staples, even some of the cards over some of the cards that I've mentioned here. But the big thing with some of these cards is these are cards that have the potential to have the highest impact, and you can easily see where they could fit into existing decks. So that's it. This is the top 5 cards I see coming out for Streets of New Capenna for Modern. Let me know in the comments down below if you disagree with my order, or if you see other cards that you think should maybe be in the top 5. Let me know. As always, this has been John for MTG Nexus.